The lazy take is that somebody with your resume would be the last person to embrace crypto.
Each person I met with, I kept waiting for the jerk to come, and they never came. Working a case for, sometimes years, then bringing that case to a federal jury, it was a huge case. It actually ended up going up to the Supreme Court. We tried it successfully. We won that. I asked the then U.S. attorney if she would take me back, and she promised me that she would take me back if I felt that it ended up being the right decision for me to go and take on a new leadership role. In white collar crime, you're looking a lot at, okay, where's that money going? It can be really hard to track. It is, on some level, much harder to find that cash. It can go from bank account to bank account, and those are closed systems. If that goes abroad, it's even harder. With blockchain, you can follow the money.
It's all open source.
People think, oh, it's hidden. They don't know that there is a way to view that.
The next 5 years, she helped grow the firm from $1 billion to over $15 billion in assets under management. Bitcoin Treasury vehicle about to list on the New York Stock Exchange with 30,021 Bitcoin on its balance sheet.
Where we're going with this, we're just at the beginning. With so much room for this space to evolve, I couldn't turn down the opportunity.
Welcome to Stacked, the show that helps you become your own best asset. Because in case you missed it, you're allowed to have a high vibe and a high net worth.
Welcome back to Stacked, the show that helps you become your own best asset. Today, we're talking about what a decade inside the U.S. Attorney's Office teaches you about why Bitcoin is the answer, with Katherine Dowling, President and Board Member of Bitcoin Standard Treasury Company. Katherine is a Harvard Law School graduate and a graduate of the University of Virginia. She spent over a decade as the federal prosecutor in the Economics Crime Unit in the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Northern District of California, prosecuting insider trading, fraud, and money laundering alongside the FBI, SEC, and IRS. From there, she went into private equity, co-founding Luminate Capital Partners, a software private equity firm in San Francisco. In 2021, she went into crypto, joining Bitwise Asset Management as a member of their executive team, as well as their General Counsel and Chief Compliance Officer, where over the next 5 years, she helped grow the firm from $1 billion to over $15 billion in assets under management and co-led the launches of that spot Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs that changed institutional crypto forever. In this episode, we'll keep it 101 and practical, the prosecutor to Bitcoin arc, and what a Bitcoin Treasury company actually does, and why she previously stated $150,000 Bitcoin by the end of 2026. Katherine, are you ready to get stacked?
Let's do it. It's so great to be here and see you again.
I'm so happy to see you too. So Katherine, I love to always start kind of at the beginning of like your life story, your career, because, Bitcoin and the whole crypto pivot, nobody really, there was never a direct path for anybody in it. This all kind of came about over the last 15 years. So I love to hear people's background stories and then eventually the pivot that led them into the space. So
what drew them over.
Yes, what drew them over. So walk me through your early life, what shaped you, UVA, Harvard Law School, and the early years.
I think high level, I have often just followed my passions and not been afraid to jump in if something's of interest. And I think, when I mentor ladies coming up in the world and now coming up in crypto, I really tell them, look, if you're in a position right now where you're learning a lot, you love your colleagues and you're respected, then you're in the right place. If if some of those areas are falling short, you should be looking. And I always tell people they should always be looking. And I think, since you have a female audience, I especially drill that into females because I feel like even myself, I feel like there definitely have been times where from a growth perspective or a leadership perspective, I probably should have jumped to other opportunities. But sometimes we women, as opposed to, and I have lots of male friends and colleagues, tend to say, oh yeah, let me stick around here and fix it, right? And sometimes you can and you should, and those are great opportunities. Like there's great opportunities to fix things. But sometimes I think it holds some women back. So I'm constantly reinforcing with my mentees and, various prior shops where, I'm still in touch. Are you still learning? Are you still loving? Yeah. And I think that, and I ask myself that too. I'm not just, I practice what I preach as much as possible, but, none of us ever get it right. We don't have the crystal ball. But for me, it's just been, just not being afraid to take chances. Even with law school, I applied to law school from undergrad because I had a healthy respect for the legal education and the analytical nature of what you study in law school. But even in undergrad, I was pretty sure that I wanted to do something maybe outside of the law. So I was really focused on the education, but not necessarily, being in a law firm, and actually never was ever in a law firm outside of like a summer associate position, which I don't know that counts. You learn some stuff, but you're mostly eating way too much. But they're good training grounds. So I actually ended up deferring law school to do an investment banking program. So,
interesting. Was anybody in your family a lawyer?
I have lots of lawyers. It's funny. My husband's all doctors, and our family, there's lots of lawyers, although we've got some doctors too. But so both of my parents were lawyers, and they had met previously, but they got engaged in law school. So, kind of a sweet story. And
so was there a lot of pressure for you to like follow kind of their traditional path in the legal space?
No, for whatever reason, there was never any professional pressure from my parents. I think if anything, my mom was definitely follow your passions. She was the only female in her law school graduating class. And she had applied to the FBI and got a letter from the FBI saying, sorry, we don't hire women. So I always feel like
you could say that.
Yeah, I wish I had that letter still, because it's kind of comical at this point. Yeah. But so I think I learned a lot from her about, hey, if it sounds interesting, at least check it out. And I think that's what I've tried to follow. And if interesting doesn't get you to crypto, I don't know what does, because crypto is cutting edge. It's changing the financial rails. And to be a part of that process, and to be a part of that, for me, the part of that education for, I spent a lot of time in DC over the last, now it's almost 6 years in DC, meeting with members of Congress. I worked very closely with the Digital Chamber, and they're a trade organization that helps facilitate those meetings. And just looking back and seeing the evolution within the members of Congress over that time frame is pretty amazing. And there's so many people. I'm one of many who participated in helping with that process. And there are other trade organizations that are great as well that also did that, because it was so important. I think just seeing that evolution, and now getting to these bipartisan votes on both sides of the aisle saying, okay, we need to be part of this evolution and part of this crypto thing, as opposed to some of the earlier views. And I lived through all of those earlier views, and some obviously still share those views, but it's nice to see where we are now. Still a lot more work to be done. We're not even up the arc. So it's a very exciting space. But I think in terms of how I got here, it's definitely the curiosity move from a background of technology. I was in private equity. It was technology, and the U.S. Attorney's Office, a lot of tech finance as well, weaved into what I did. And
the path into the U.S. Attorney's Office is not an obvious one. What pulled you into federal prosecution, and what kind of cases did you spend the decade actually working on?
Yes. All right. Big question. Bookending on kind of following passions. With the U.S. Attorney's Office, I actually did have a lot of my fellow classmates. My fellow classmates, a lot of them from law school, were in these types of positions. So I had some front row seats to what they were working on, what they were doing, and we were just selling the company where I was working. So I was looking at, okay, what's next? What do I want to do? And I had some reach outs from folks who were at the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Northern District of California, which is where I ended up going. And because I had a financial background, they were also looking for candidates who had financial background, who would be able to understand the financial statements, and maybe be being able to put that knowledge together with the legal side, be more useful as AUSAs looking at white collar crime. So that was kind of the genesis, and I knew I had friends who really were enjoying the job, and it's an amazing job. It's really exciting. It's really fun. It's super challenging. Working a case for sometimes years, and then bringing that case to a federal jury and explaining it to them in more layman's terms, but also having to weave in the technical aspects upon which they need to decide is really, it's a privilege, and it is tremendously interesting. So highly, it's a job I highly recommend. I didn't think I'd stay there for a decade. And when I share stories about some of the fact patterns of these cases, it's definitely a truth is stranger than fiction scenario. So always some fun stories behind the fact patterns, because it comes down to people. I mean, people are the ones that commit the crimes, but they are people, and just understanding how that occurred and how it impacts a lot of the other people in their lives. So there were, a lot of stories around that, but also working with a number of federal agents across the different federal agencies, depending on the nature of the crime and what was involved. Some of the hardest working people out there, truly, truly dedicated. And, when you've been doing white collar prosecution, you start to work with agents in all the different agencies. They start getting to know you. And then sometimes they'll bring their cases directly to you. So you have these kind of lifelong relationships with these folks. And so it's a great job. Honored to have done it. And I'm really glad I made that jump, because it was, a little bit of an unknown outside of hearing the feedback that I had friends who were enjoying the job and also felt like they were giving back.
Yeah, it sounds like, number one, a really small community. There's not a lot of people that could take that role on, understanding finance at such an in-depth level, but then also from a legal standpoint, in the vantage point of representing the country, right?
Yeah.
I imagine you mentioned a lot of interesting personality types on the people you were prosecuting against. Is there any common traits or motivators that you saw?
Across the board, we had one guy that we prosecuted that he was like a Robin Hood, right? So he was stealing funds, absolutely, but he was giving the majority of them away, and he was very popular. And so part of it was, when you're then prosecuting that person, people are like, no, this can't be, right? Yeah. He absconded to Mexico. We had to get him back. So there's a whole drama of getting this gentleman back. But you do see, people have their weaknesses, and, whether it's a mix of greed or opportunity, a mix of both, just the human dynamic always plays in all these cases, especially in the white collar cases. It becomes an interesting part. And sometimes you have family members testifying against family members, or if they've cooperated. So it becomes quite entwined and interesting. So
more probably emotional than people would think.
Yes,
who are on the outside.
Yeah, absolutely. I think another funny story is I have when I was in labor in the hospital with my third child, I got a call from a Secret Service agent. They had located one of a guy that we were trying to track down. Mm-hmm. And the hospital staff was like, why is this woman taking this call? So it's one of my other favorite, U.S. attorney, situations where I was like, of course I'm taking this call. Like, we're getting this guy, right?
You've been working on it probably for years.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you end up getting him?
Oh, we did. Yeah. And I never even told the Secret Service agent what was going on. I had to keep putting him on hold because I was having labor pains, but then I would get back on. Yeah.
That is dedication to the job. Wow.
But we got him.
You've worked alongside FBI, SEC, the IRS. What did you see in legacy financial systems from that vantage point that most people never see?
I think one thing was follow the money. A lot of, in white collar crime, you're looking a lot at, okay, where's that money going? And it can be really hard to track. IRS criminal division is very helpful. I mean, we would have all the paperwork up on the wall, because when you were trying to figure out where the money went, it meant looking into a slew of bank accounts, because people are trying to hide the cash. So kind of put this in the context of Bitcoin or digital assets in general. It is on some level much harder to find that cash, because it can go from bank account to bank account. And those are closed systems. You have to actually make the informational request to be able to get the information on that receiving bank account. And if that goes abroad, it's even harder. And that involves treaties with different countries, if you have a treaty with that country. And it can be really hard to follow the money. So some of the agents that were really good at that, you really wanted to work with those folks because they would really help you prove your case, whether it was money laundering or what have you. Just following the money is key to the white collar cases. And that's actually one thing with blockchain is you can follow the money. You can see where it goes.
It's all open source.
Yeah. So and I think that's something that when I talk to friends, or if I'm doing educational sessions or TED Talks or what have you, I think that's a kind of cognitive dissonance on how it works. I think people think, oh, it's hidden. They don't know that there is a way to view that, right? So I think that's something that, knowing how hard it was to follow the money and how important that was, I think it's an important and interesting point to compare to. Now, of course, when we have a number of situations where the digital assets end up in North Korea, so we do have to solve for that. But we know where it is.
Right,
we know where it's going.
Right.
So I think it's an interesting point that I try to share with folks who are more on the kind of crypto 101 side of the kind of pseudonymity.
Every person on Stacked has a moment where they walked away from one path and chose another. I think yours is one of the most counterintuitive acts in finance. So take us back to the moment when you decided to leave the U.S. Attorney's Office. What was the actual trigger?
It was so hard, actually. And I think that's hard. Like sometimes the longer you stay someplace, you're kind of like, okay, I love what I'm doing. But I had just finished an insider trading case that had been going on for years. It started in the SEC, and then we at the U.S. Attorney's Office took on the criminal side of it. And it was a huge case. It actually ended up going up to the Supreme Court. So we're the district court, and we tried it successfully. And so we won that case. And I had to reach out before the case was over from a private equity shop, Thoma Bravo, about potentially joining them in a new role that they wanted to create as they were growing. And Thoma Bravo had been doing really well, and they continue to do really well, but they wanted somebody with my background to come on and come into this new position. But I was not going to go before this trial was over. So then once the trial was over and we continued those conversations and they had not filled that position, I thought, okay, I've been here about a decade. If I'm going to do anything different, the time is now. And I was with my finance background, and I had been in banking before. It just seemed like a tremendously interesting role to take on, and I really liked the team that I would be joining there. So I made the jump, but I made I asked the then U.S. attorney if she, the second female U.S. attorney in the Northern District, if she would take me back if I wanted to come back. And she promised me that she would take me back if I felt that I had made this jump and it wasn't the right decision for me. And it ended up being the right decision for me to go and take on a new leadership role and just evolve and grow as professionally. And so I'm very glad I did. But that was probably the hardest leap because I'd been there so long. And after 10 years, I think they say if you live in San Francisco for 10 years, you become a native. So correlate that to the job scenario. I think it becomes harder as you take longer to leave.
What was the role there?
So I was head of legal and their investor relations. So as they were scaling and raising bigger funds, and they were about to raise another bigger fund, they needed to bring on more folks to really help with that process, manage that process. And they had 2 different offices. So that was the role.
Very cool. And then you co-founded Luminate Capital Partners, a software private equity firm in San Francisco. When when does that kind of happen on your timeline?
So that was kind of after Thoma Bravo, I went and joined somebody that I had known for years and years. And that was a very big jump because that was, okay, we have a private placement memorandum with an idea and a strategy to go after kind of a smaller group, kind of lower revenue group of software companies than most of the private equity shops were going after at that juncture. But we felt that there was a space in the market for that, and that turned out to be right. But raising a fund from, kind of from tabula rasa, no office, no operations, nothing. That was a big leap of faith to take, but it luckily ended up being a good one. We were able to raise our fund and be oversubscribed ultimately, which while you're raising it does not feel like that's ever going to happen. You feel like, that first, how you go to some restaurants have that dollar up on the wall. You really feel an affinity for that first check that comes in. It all comes in at closing, but the agreement to provide the check, and it was really hard to raise, especially as two females.
I was going to say, but your co-founder was another woman.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was really hard because we believed we had a really good strategy. We had good proof points, and we had her prior record, but it wasn't a lengthy record. Investors want to see tons of prior success at sourcing through ups and downs. Mm-hmm. So we had some examples of that, but not the full panoply. Mm-hmm. I think it was useful that coming as a federal prosecutor, I think having her sourcing background and my financial background, but also my background as somebody in the government who was prosecuting federal crimes, they were like, okay, well, this person most likely is not going to be coming in and, doing bad things with the money we give them. So from that operational due diligence, I think I was able to kind of give them solace that we were setting everything up correctly, and that I was, with a decade at the U.S. Attorney's Office, I was well equipped to know what was setting things up improperly. Right. So we had all the controls, et cetera, in place, and then just kind of tromped across the U.S. to really pitch our case. I entered so many, okay, go on stage and tell your strategy and let people know. So it's kind of that marketing side that you have to get the word out. Like, this is what we're trying to do. And a friend of mine who is actually through my husband, Michael Kim, actually introduced me to some family offices, and that is actually how we got our first check. So just having these people who are willing to help and make introductions for you is super helpful. So, and then once you kind of get those first checks, it really helps if they're willing to share, which most of them are, momentum. Creates momentum. We were also able to source a kind of pre-close deal that was very successful in a short time period, which was a nice proof point for the strategy. So we kind of just combine all that. But let me tell you, along the way, ladies, it's like fundraising is not for the faint of heart. You're calling people in St. Louis saying, hey, I'm going to be in St. Louis. And if they all cancel the meetings, you're not going to be in St. Louis, but you're going to be in St. Louis until then. And you get way more no's than you get yeses, way more no's. And then sometimes you get disappointing no's. Like I remember getting a no from one woman who was really supporting us, and then they kind of pivoted and went with another group, that was all men, but it's private equity, so there are a lot of all men. And I was like, oh, you too, Brutus. I was like, come on. Yeah. So I haven't reached back out to say, hey, look how well the fund did, but it's because I'm not that type of person. But at any rate, that was a tremendously fun experience with the fund one.
How much did you guys raise for the initial fund?
We raised about $266 million.
That's a big number.
Yeah, but small relative to a lot of private equity firms. For your first one, we're aiming for 250. And then of course some folks too, like some of your LPs don't want you to raise more, so you have to kind of get the permission because they want you to be in the sweet spot of what they
have
what you've
mandates
charted.
too.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
What was the first check size?
ooh, shoot, I'm not sure. I remember exactly. It wasn't $1.
Yeah. It was a
I don't remember
sizable
exactly.
one.
I
It
don't
was
remember
one that got you
exactly.
excited.
Yeah,
and-
sorry, I don't remember exactly. It's been a minute since then, but again, it was like just opening those doors with some of those family office introductions. Yeah, it's just
And also, I think interesting to just pause for a minute on like being a woman in the software, the tech space, and having a fund. You guys are probably one of 1,000.
I don't even know the numbers.
I don't even know.
There weren't
There
many.
were not really.
In fact, it was funny. I'll share with your audience on a no-name basis. We, my partner and I, went out to. We were out in Colorado meeting with a family office, and the gentleman, a much older man, seemed very interested in what we were talking about, but he did feel the need to say, don't you two pretty ladies have husbands? Why do you need to do this? That's a paraphrase, but it was something along those lines. And you're like, thank you for the compliment. But we enjoy doing this. We like doing this. We believe in this. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of fun stories, but there's also plenty of positive ones. Like the people that end up believing in you. And I never pitch anything I don't fully believe in. I can't do that. So I wouldn't be a very good sales team member unless I was fully behind whatever it was,
whatever you're selling.
But if I fully believe in it, and for me, if I'm in a role, I have to fully believe in it. Yeah. So it's very easy to respond to those statements to say, well, here are the bona fides. Here's why we believe this is going to be a very good investment, and love it or leave it. But it's going to be two ladies behind.
What was your first signal on the crypto space, and when were you introduced to the concept of Bitcoin?
A couple different ways. Obviously, being out in San Francisco, it was percolating. So, and being at the U.S. Attorney's Office, we saw some aspects of it in the early days. Were
you seeing like the bad side of?
Mostly at the U.S. Attorney's Office. That's when you're hearing it at the U.S. Attorney's Office, it's not typically the good side of anything. Whether it's art theft, wine theft, cash is still king. But yeah, so kind of early days, we were seeing, that's how it came up on exposed. Your radar. That's how, exactly. That's how.
So then when did you get like the positive signal on Bitcoin and cryptocurrency?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think being in technology and then being on the kind of investment side, kind of post the U.S. Attorney's Office, just doing more reading about it. And then again, being in the San Francisco area, having some folks who I knew who were involved in it and were talking about it. So it just piques your interest, and then you start looking at it, and you look at the technology side of it. Again, my background is, no matter whether I was in finance, operations, legal, et cetera, it's finance and technology. I think it's that next evolution of technology, and I think that's another kind of disconnect I find with people who think like, why do we need 18,000 currencies? And just kind of getting people out of that mindset of these aren't just currencies. If you think of them more like companies and think of the use cases, I think that's very important. And with Bitcoin, because at BSTR, we are Bitcoin, looking at its history, looking at the use cases for Bitcoin, and then looking at the potential. And as somebody who spent a lot of time studying economics in college, I think if you have that background, and for many people that don't, but as for my background in economics, it just, to me, structurally makes sense relative to our current financial system. So long answer to your short question, but just continuing to keep up with it and to be curious and interested in it, and to follow up and have conversations with friends who were more directly involved in it. I think having a conversation early on with David Sachs, actually, who our kids were in preschool together, and he is somebody who has always been an incredible forward thinker. So he, of course, was already into it at that point, and so he shared some thoughts, and
You start pulling back the curtain, and you can't unsee it. I studied economics. That was my major, and it's how I also, similarly fell into the space. My dad is a trader, economist, and so he was very early on to Bitcoin, just watching it and hearing about it. So he put a little bug in my ear, but from an economic standpoint and monetary policy standpoint, once you start digging and you learn enough about our current economic and monetary policy in this country, and seeing how does the blockchain technology work from like a technology standpoint, and then also Bitcoin as a hard asset, as a finite resource, it just starts making a lot of sense, and you kind of can't unsee it.
You can't unsee it. That's actually a great way. It starts clicking and you can't unsee it.
You can't unsee it.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. And then you look at kind of look out and see all of the possibilities and the use cases, right? So right now we're so, majority of folks are so fiat grounded. But if you start thinking about Bitcoin as a store of value, and you start thinking about all the spots where fiat is in the majority position, you start seeing a lot more potential for future businesses, current businesses,
opportunities,
and
white
opportunities.
Space.
Yeah, for what the room that Bitcoin has to grow. Marry that, of course, with the friendlier regulatory environment in a good way. Like, I'm not saying, oh, the gates are open, it's the Kentucky Derby. I'm saying we are actually getting rules of the road. And the SEC, this current, I call it the Atkinized SEC. They have really, and with Commissioner Persh, with years of her being in the dissent, she's so knowledgeable about this space. She's so humble too, but she knows a ton about this space. She's met with folks from just the Bitcoiners, the DeFi folks, et cetera, getting those guidelines out there, creating the rules. So even though we don't have clarity yet, and I'm an optimist, so I think clarity is coming soon, having those pieces of, let's call them fine literature out there is tremendously helpful, because I mean, the legislation is the gold standard and we want the legislation, but during the Gensler era, no one was even potentially willing to do that. It just wasn't happening. And I think that was a misstep. Like, you got to roll up the sleeves and create those rules. And it became this, talk about Wizard of Oz, right? Like, you didn't know what was happening there. Although I will say, from my time in the U.S. Attorney's Office and all the work I did with the SEC when at Bitwise, these are great people. Like, they were actually, crypto, we, live and breathe crypto, but it's one portion of the myriad of things that they do. And I think I had a healthy respect for that. And I never, I never went in to the SEC when I was trying to get the spot Bitcoin ETF launch saying like, what's up? You go in with data, go in with research, and that's what moves the needle. Right. And I'd like to say, I believe, my impression is that when my colleagues and we'd come in with a really small group at Bitwise. We were small. We came in and we brought the dry erase markers to kind of show them what we were thinking on the whiteboard. As an ex-government person, I knew you got to bring your own because they're all dead in the conference rooms in the government offices. So we would bring our own and just graph out, okay, here's operationally how it's going to work. And I think some other groups at the time would come in with like 50 lawyers. And I think that, I honestly think that wasn't as helpful, because smaller groups get things done, more questions are asked. So over that time period, I think, we did the math at some point. I think we at Bitwise put forth about 500 pages of research. Our CIO, Matt Haugen, created a lot of that and, tirelessly helped us. And then a different colleague and I would go in and be like, here, we provided the research and let's talk to you about operationally what's going to happen. So it was a slog, and it felt like the goalpost kept getting moved, not necessarily by the people we were talking to, but really just by the leadership at that juncture. So it's amazing that got out during the Gensler era. And obviously there was a little bit of a lawsuit from Grayscale that helped make that happen, but we got that out. But I have a very healthy respect for the folks at the SEC and their jobs and what they do because of my time working with them at the U.S. Attorney's Office. So very important roles, and I think what they're doing now is great because it'll really buttress the future legislation. But if we don't get that legislation, at least we have some rules out there. Again, I think we will get that legislation, but if we didn't, at least it helps towards that end for the players in the industry, for the businesses that are just trying to make the right decisions. And really 99% of them are trying to make the right decisions. And I think sometimes the headlines are so focused, and I get it because the stories are there.
Well, they're mainstream media headlines too.
Yeah,
so they're designed to be clickbait and get readership up and not necessarily tell the whole truth.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly right. So I think those are the headlines, those are the stories, but it really doesn't reflect all the hard work of all the people that are in the industry who want the rules, want the regulations, and just want to get to a point where it's clear and you're not having to spend. I mean, some of these companies were not viable because the legal costs alone were going to tank them. And that's not, from a competitive standpoint, for keeping this business on our shores, which is what we want to do. That doesn't, that sets people a sail for places where it's clear. Not even just that they're not, oh, let me get out of here because I don't like the regulatory environment. I want no rules. And I'm sure there's some of those. Fine, then they can go. We'll let them go. But for the folks who want to do it right and just don't have that blueprint, why are you going to subject yourself to potential prosecution? You're not. You're going to go do it someplace else where it's more clear, and where some of those jurisdictions were like, hey, come on over. I used to joke to crowds like, don't let Dubai take our crypto. They've already taken our golf. But now it looks like
it's coming back. I think golf is coming back.
Has crumbled. So anyway, but healthy respect for any jurisdiction that's working on this. Really, it all is good for the global ecosystem. So I'm a strong proponent of everybody getting to a point of clear regulation that isn't doesn't push to the point of cumbersome, where it doesn't work with the nature of the transactions. And I think that's sometimes where that's where you really have to roll up the sleeves, because sometimes it's not that the businesses are trying to get out of it. It's just that the way TradFi has done it, there's just no one to put in that box on that form. I mean, it's literally as simple as that,
Yeah. I mean, I think there's 2 points I want to touch on what you were just talking about. I think number one is, how interesting of a time we're in, particularly in the last 5 years with the legal environment, the regulatory environment, and how much is changing, and how, people like yourself or these cryptocurrency companies that are coming up are literally in a position to be writing the rules in real time. And the current legislation and lawmakers in place, they're actually looking to collaborate with these companies and figure out what is going on and how should this be set up. It's not a combative environment. And I think a lot of people don't realize that are outside of the cryptocurrency space. I think the news, the mainstream media makes it look like it's this big fight and it's, the left versus the right and in a regulatory standpoint, but it's not. Maybe that was the case 5 or 10 years ago, but now it seems like both sides are totally pro crypto, and it's how do we actually move the needle forward in a way that makes sense, and we can, make this a business friendly environment, and we can do things in a way that are supportive.
Yeah, that is 100% correct. And it is actually a big change from the Gensler era. And unfortunately, when you talk to folks within the SEC then, who will remain unnamed, that was just the culture from the top. And the culture comes from the top. And I know everyone was, myself included, because I was in crypto longer than, before Gensler came. Everyone was excited. Oh, he taught it at MIT, right? We just, didn't see this coming on some level. But I think there was just, he linked up with Elizabeth Warren, and they just became they kind of espoused this kind of 1950s style, like Nancy Drew fraudster narrative around crypto. And unfortunately, it painted all of us with that brush. Which is not to say, look, I was a federal prosecutor. There is going to be crime in every area where money is to be made. Any area, you name it, money to be made. I used to work in a building that had like precious metals on the roof. It was an old building, and we'd have people climb up to go, grab it. Like, anyway, this happens, right? So that's like a niche example, but this happens. So I think it's dangerous, though, just to paint an entire industry and not focus in on, okay, well, what's actually happening here? And I think that's where, with this recent evolution, you saw a lot of the cases go away where, not the fraud cases, you saw the cases go away where the definitions were not clear. If somebody's trying to defraud others, those should absolutely go forward, find the facts, find the case. But if you have a case that's based on unclear definitions, mixed messages, et cetera, I don't think, philosophically, that's not how we want to go after people. We want it to be very clear. If I'm going to come after you and prosecute you, I want it to be because you actually did things and I have the facts to back that up. If those waters are muddied, then it maybe shouldn't be a prosecution. So I think we saw some of those changes take place, and we saw, I think, good changes along those lines, because it's not always so black and white,
as much as we would like it to be.
Right, as much as we would like to be.
Human nature, we want things to be black and white.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so 2021, you go to Bitwise as an executive team member, as well as General Counsel and CCO, Chief Compliance Officer. The lazy take is that somebody with your resume would be the last person to embrace crypto. Walk me through the logic. What did the prosecutor's seat teach you that made you go in this direction and not the other?
So a headhunter reached out to me, who I knew personally. She was a good friend of a friend, super fun woman. I say that because although I tell people, oh, you should always, listen for opportunities, take calls, you can't always respond to kind of cold calls. It's just, you're busy, you're working your current job. But because I knew her, I took the call and had more faith in what she, had to say. And she's like, hey, I have this great team. You've got to meet them. This company Bitwise. I'm like, who? This is like 6 years ago at this point. I'm like, I don't know them. And she's like, well, just meet them. So for her, and because I knew her, I was like, okay, I will meet them. And I was joining the executive team, but I was going to be the only female in the company. So I was like the 12th person. It was all guys. And the executive team I was joining, obviously, if the whole company is all guys, the executive team's all guys. So I was like, all right, let's see, what's this gonna be like? Each person I met with, I kept waiting for the jerk to come, and they never came. I was like, this is a great team.
Everyone's pretty cool.
Yeah, I actually really like these people.
Yeah.
But it's like in any environment, you're thinking there's going to be that person. And with my technology background and interest in crypto, and then really liking this team, and then hearing from them what the growth trajectory looked like. At this point, there's no ETFs in Bitcoin. There were some private placement products. There was other products that we were trying to get onto or that I was a part of then to get onto the OTCQX, right? So it was, okay, there's some serious white space here to do some interesting things in a cutting edge space. The regulatory environment is far from clear, but we can discuss this, and we can figure out the clear path to do this in. So it was really exciting, and I made the jump. And it's a great team. Yeah, fantastic team. They continue to do incredibly well, which makes me very happy. I'm still friends with lots of them. It's just then moved on to BSTR because you can't say no to Adam Back, Dr. Back. In short, he is one of the OGs, and he's incredibly humble, incredibly smart, and has been when people say, "Oh, when did you come over to Bitcoin or believe in Bitcoin?" He's kind of believed in it from day one, really. And I think after meeting him and some of the then board members and hearing the growth story, and with my background in launching ETFs in the space, and my 6 years in now, I guess, the understanding of crypto and my belief in where we're going with this, we're just at the beginning. That's my belief.
Yeah.
We are just at the beginning. I think you share that view
Yes.
as well, with so much room for the space to evolve. I couldn't turn down the opportunity to, take on this leadership position in what I view as kind of the 2.0, right? ETFs aren't going anywhere. They're great products, but they're passive. It's set it and forget it. So you're hoping for price appreciation.
What is the difference between a Bitcoin ETF and a Bitcoin Treasury company?
Sure. So a Bitcoin ETF, that's one type of product. So it's in your brokerage account. So you could go to your brokerage account, which was not a given a few years ago. You can go to your brokerage account and say, okay, I want some Bitcoin exposure. I want easy Bitcoin exposure. And you will find a number of tickers now in your brokerage account where you can get that through one of the different companies, whether it's Bitwise, BlackRock, Fidelity, et cetera. And you can buy that ETF fund and do what you will with it, hold it, sell it, what have you. So that's a type of product. When I say set it and forget it, the structure of it is such that it holds. So if it's a Bitcoin ETF, there's Bitcoin exposure is what you're being provided, but you're buying shares in it.
You're not actually owning real Bitcoin.
Yeah, you're owning the share,
like Bitcoin.
Exactly. Yeah. So the company that's behind the ETF, that Bitcoin is custodied. You own the shares in that fund. So when I say kind of set it and forget it with ETF funds, if say you're one of these issuers and you think, okay, something is changing in the Bitcoin landscape, it might be better if we buy more Bitcoin because we're going to take advantage of that. You can't do that. You're not buying and selling in an actively managed way. So that's the difference. So again, ETFs aren't going anywhere. It has been a game changer, opening up institutional doors, allowing people this tickered access in and out of their brokerage accounts, better able to work with financial advisors. But this next phase, as I see it, for the Bitcoin treasury companies is the ability to actively manage the Bitcoin and to do more with it. So you're not just trying to, you're not just looking at the investment as, okay, stockpiling and price appreciation. You're thinking, and your smart team, and I believe we have a very smart team at BSTR, is looking for ways to actively manage that Bitcoin. So in addition to the price appreciation, layering on either yield or alpha returns on that Bitcoin. So that's kind of that's why I say kind of version 2.0, because you're not just doing the more passive hold it, get your exposure, but the entity can't really respond to kind of market dynamics in an active way because you can't actively manage those. So the treasury platforms, the treasury companies allow you to do that. And it's also looking at Bitcoin in a different way that is evolving, right? Having, like we were talking about before, places where fiat is normally in your mind, thinking about where Bitcoin could also be added into that mindset and also give you that diversification and that ability to kind of increase your returns with the addition of Bitcoin. So you are seeing, and we have seen, a number of companies that aren't necessarily just Bitcoin treasury companies adding Bitcoin exposure as part of their their process for their treasuries. So that's kind of the 2.0 version, and allowing us at BSTR to actively manage that Bitcoin for our would-be future shareholders.
So inside the treasury company, you would be investing in other companies. Would they necessarily be only Bitcoin native companies, or is it a mix?
Yeah. So our strategy is that we will be working with multi-strategy managers, a diversified approach, from a diversified strategy approach, diversified manager approach to execute on that strategy. So when you say buying companies, that's kind of another portion of our future strategy, since we haven't closed yet our future strategy, to look at opportunistic M&A in the Bitcoin native space, companies that are helping to bridge the gap between TradFi and digital assets. We call them Bitcoin financialization companies.
Oh, I haven't heard that terminology yet. I like that. Bitcoin financialization.
Yeah, it's a mouthful.
It is a mouthful.
You might not be
It's
able to
a
say it
mouthful.
10 times fast or even 3 times fast. I might not be able to say it again, let's be fair. But that's what we will be, looking to do and looking to achieve. So, and as I said, we're very excited about, we have a veteran team with lots of experience. So we're excited about the team that we have built.
The 2 or 3 things first wave Bitcoin treasuries got wrong that BSTR is built to fix.
So first, what's interesting is at BSTR, we're not viewing other companies that are kind of in the general space or that are lumped into the Bitcoin treasury company or the DAT space. We believe that there's room for many within this area because as we've discussed, Bitcoin's kind of lots of ramp room. And I think Strategy, Michael Saylor, same approach. Like he's telling everybody, Bitcoin's here to stay. Here's our strategy. He's thinking room for many. You should all be investing in Bitcoin, right? So we don't really view these other companies as kind of quote competitors because we do think there's room for many and room for many strategies. There was a lot of noise in the fall around some of these companies, and I think they had a rough market to come out into because of the price coming down and now the war, right? Some of these kind of crystal ball areas that you didn't see coming, and maybe some of them made decisions around capital structure that could have been a little cleaner, a little smoother, a little easier to market to the to explain to the market. And I think some of those companies are working on that. But again, we kind of view those a little bit outside of what we're doing. We are kind of set in our strategy that we believe in, the team that we're building. So excited of what's to come.
It's a very exciting time right now. What do you think is changing in the Bitcoin treasury space in the next 12 months that people should absolutely be paying attention to right now?
Well, like I said, this kind of version 2 and all of what you can do from the active management side. So I think it's a younger group of companies, so it'll be exciting to watch and see how they execute on their strategies. So you'll see a lot, and I think they're going to be a watched group. I mean, Strategy is always watched and kind of lump some of these other companies in and kind of see what they're doing, what they're there might be M&A activity out there. I don't have the crystal ball, but I think there's a lot of folks that will be watching and that are interested to see this next wave and evolution.
You went on record in December calling for $150,000 Bitcoin by the end of 2026. We're in May, 5 months in. Is the call still right? Are the 3 pillars regulation, QE, institutional inflows still holding? And what is one variable that could break the thesis?
It's been a very frothy market, as you know. Personally, I wish that post the administration change, it wasn't as much of a jump. Like a healthier climb, a better slope would have been more productive for everybody. And so I think that frothiness was a bit wrought. But I am a firm. I get asked all the time, where's Bitcoin pricing going? And I wish I knew. I wish I had that that future knowledge. But I believe, as do you, we discussed it, us being economics folks in the bona fides of Bitcoin. So I am a strong believer that the price will appreciate, and we're going to kind of headed in that direction. So we may be at that number at the end of the year. But I also try not to fully focus on what the number is, just because we're in it for the long term. And at BSTR, we also will we have strategies for if it does go down, right? We're not just stockpiling, like we'll sell if we need to, et cetera. But I think the important part is focusing on those fundamentals, right. And not just relying on price appreciation, but all the use cases, the businesses in the space, and seeing kind of all of the potential of where we can go with businesses around Bitcoin as well.
You have said digital asset treasuries are entering an institutional phase, and the speculative frameworks are about to die. For the woman listening who's thinking about putting Bitcoin on her own company balance sheet, what should she be checking when she's looking at any Treasury companies she's considering investing in?
Any investment, people need to do the research and be comfortable. And I'll hear friends be like, oh, a friend told me to invest. I'm like, well, you're not your friend. Like, make sure you also do the research. And you have such a smart audience, right? So I'm sure that they do their diligence.
They definitely do.
Yeah. And you probably
smart.
get calls all the time. So I think anytime I'm making an investment in or outside of digital assets, I want to make sure that I read up and know as much as possible. And then, don't stay in too long too. Sometimes that's you can make a, emotional mistake of like, oh, staying too long, or, oh, the price went down, let me sell right away. But I think it's just important to look at who's the team. Do you believe in the strategy? Does it resonate with you? Do you think this team that you've already determined you like, because that's first, do you think this team can execute on that strategy that resonates with you? Are you a Bitcoin believer, right? If you aren't, you maybe shouldn't even be looking at the space at all. Like, do you believe in the fundamentals of Bitcoin? That's even before you start looking, right? So, and then obviously with public companies, there's lots of disclosure. So you have a lot of reading materials. So you can go out there and do your diligence, and you can compare across the field if it's a space you're interested in. So I think that's tremendously important to be able to go, do that work and do that research and not just jump in because, Susie told you it was a good investment.
There's so much information out there, and really just diving in and doing all the research that you can before you put your money behind it is the smartest thing you can do.
And diversify.
So the New York Times just spent a year trying to unmask Satoshi. They landed on Adam Back. Before we get into substance, does it actually matter who Satoshi is?
I don't think it does, but I understand the mystique and the interest in like unveiling. Anytime there's, Deep Throat, right? Like that probably is like before your time, but like, and before my time too, actually. But like when you think about, it comes to mind in terms of mysteries, people love unsolved mysteries. I think there are swaths of America that they probably watch unsolved mysteries every day. I get it, it's tremendously fascinating, like, or whodunits, who did it, right? There's always going to be, okay, let's solve this. Like we want to solve, we want to know. But I don't think it does matter, right? It's out there. You can't unring that bell, as much as, many have tried. But it's a great question. I don't think it really matters who it is, but I absolutely understand the human desire to figure it out. I was a federal prosecutor. Like I like to get to answers
too. You love solving mysteries.
I love solving this, right? Actually, speaking of economics, one of the reasons I took so much economics, I went to college pre-med, and then I took an economics class because you should learn these things, and my high school didn't offer it. Now high schools offer economics and macro, but I took a class in Econ 101 with Kenneth Elzinga, who was one of my best professors ever. And he actually wrote mysteries that were solved based on economic principles.
That's fun.
It's super fun.
So nerdy, but I think
it's
fun.
Super fun. And he didn't, my recollection is he didn't like make you read it for class. It wasn't like, here, read my book. Although a lot of professors, they are teaching off their book. But anyway, I think, they kind of go hand in hand, like bring the data, solve, et cetera. But that's one of the reasons I was so interested in economics is having a really great professor. So I understand the mystery. And I think I'm sure somebody else will come out and say it's somebody else and have reasons for that.
So there's a counter argument that Satoshi's anonymity is part of Bitcoin's immaculate conception, that the mythology itself is load bearing. Is that a retail story, or do institutional allocators actually care who Satoshi is?
Do they care? Do institutional allocators care? I think they've kind of moved beyond that at this point. I think it used to be a question maybe 6 years ago because the fiduciary obligation, institutions, there's a fiduciary obligation. So if there's, some shady person that's behind this, you might want to know. But at this point, since it's been so long, it's not a question that even comes up in diligence anymore. Like we have to be worried about this because it's, it's going to come out that it's somebody on the OFAC list.
Yeah.
I don't know, like
It's not even on the radar anymore.
It's not on the radar. I mean, I've heard every theory, right? It's a group of people. It's somebody who's now no longer.
It's the U.S. government. It's China. It's been everybody.
It's Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah.
Psych. Right? Like, who is it? But I think, but the mystique is interesting. And I think that, whodunit aspect will continue. And I understand that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a fun story, but to be honest, like, this is either embarrassing or a good thing. I didn't even realize there was a new article that came out that was like this whole big blow up in the news about, obviously, Adam Back. Is he Satoshi? I had no idea, because this has been around in the Bitcoin space for so many years. It's been a different person like every month. I didn't even know there was a new article that came out, because it's like passe in the industry.
You've seen it. Yeah. It's like there's multiple documentaries, et cetera, and other ones coming out. And I mean, what I can tell you is that Adam Back is, he's just incredibly humble. He is somebody who has phenomenal ideas. He's a visionary. And he obviously is very pro Bitcoin, and he's been in the space for so long that he's seen a lot of the different areas. And I mean, one of the reasons he was inspired to found BSTR is because he was an investor in a number, of other kind of like companies, and thought, I feel like I've got a great take on this strategy, and I want to have that voice and be executing on this. And I think that's what was compelling to me to join up with him, because he's kind of been there, done that, and has experienced the ups and the downs, and the various use cases. And I think he's kind of sees the future from here as well. So that I can tell you about.
No, he's definitely a visionary, and what an incredible opportunity for you in your career to now work alongside him and lead this new initiative.
Absolutely.
All right, so we're going to move into the last part of the show, my favorite part, the lightning round.
Oh, lightning round. Okay.
Bitcoin or crypto?
Bitcoin.
Self-custody or ETFs?
Well, I'm a self-custody person. However, I'll caveat that with that, some of the tickered ways to get exposure might just be the best approach for folks. Kind of, you need to meet them where they are. But yeah, so maybe, am I allowed to say?
You can say both.
Both.
You can say both. Spot ETF or Treasury company?
Well, I think that's another obvious one too. Yes, Treasury company.
Federal prosecutor or defense attorney, if you had to do one again?
Well, my husband's the opposite. So, federal prosecutor, absolutely.
Adam Back or Michael Saylor?
Oh, well, Adam Back, of course. But props to Saylor. He's turned lots of folks onto Bitcoin.
Genius Act or Clarity Act?
I mean, both. We need both. Yes. And I've seen every prior rendition of both of them, from the ugly babies and whatnot to the current. And we will live in a world where Bitcoin and other digital assets are not political. Yeah. That will come.
It's coming.
And it's, to an extent, it's already there. But it's been definitely too politicized, and it behooves all of us just to go to a space where that's not part of the equation.
End of 2026 Bitcoin target price, 150K or
I'm sticking where I was. Okay. I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not giving, financial advice, investment advice, but we're headed that direction, and we will certainly get there eventually. If not, in time for Christmas or New Year's.
San Francisco or Miami?
Oh, San Francisco.
Bitcoin conference or consensus?
Oh, I like both. I've been going to both for years. I really like both of them. I just don't want them together. So I don't like them both together.
All right, you guys, this is your Bitcoin Treasury Starter Pack, and this is exactly the kind of conversation Stacked exists for. You can find Katherine on LinkedIn and learn more about Bitcoin Standard Treasury Company at bstr.com. If this episode made you think differently about Bitcoin and about Bitcoin treasuries, send this to the most ambitious woman in your world, because soft power runs on hard assets, and Bitcoin is the hardest asset there is out there. I am your host, Emily Dempsey, and this is Stacked, the show helping you become your own best asset. You guys are not subscribed, like, liking or following our show, please do so. All of your support helps us out, especially in the early days. And we will see you next week.
That's a wrap on this episode of Stacked. If this one added value, share it with someone who's ready to level up their financial life. Subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're feeling generous, leave a rating and review. It helps us keep the show going and reach more people who are serious about becoming their own best asset. You can subscribe to our newsletter at www.stackedassets.co for weekly intel on Bitcoin markets, business, and living well. Follow along on socials at Stacked Assets or my personal at Emily Dempsey for more on Bitcoin business and building the life you actually want. I'll see you next week. Stay stacked.